So week 2 of Team Dynamix is done. The first 2 weeks have been a bit of a roller coaster. First week I found incredibly difficult as my body readjusted to all the changes. Second week felt fantastic. More energy, more invigorated, easier to get up in the morning, better stamina, just overall loving the effects of it. But at the end of week 2 we have our first ever cheat meal on the course. The way this cheat meal works is you're allowed whatever you want in one sitting. So you can sit down for a meal and you can have 3 courses if you want, you can have a beer with it, you can do whatever you fancy, but once you leave that meal, you're done. That's it. You can't then carry on eating bad after that. So all day I'd been super excited for this meal. It was all I was talking about at work. I imagine I was driving my colleagues fairly insane with it. It's just after 2 weeks of not eating the food that you generally love to eat in the past, it's kind of a big deal that you're going to get to eat it. So I had my healthy breakfast, my healthy lunch, and then set out for this unhealthy meal in the evening. So I went to Coast in Stevenage Leisure Park and I had a pulled pork burger with sweet potato fries as my main and a cheesy garlic bread as the starter. I chose not to have dessert but instead had a beer and a Pepsi because they're the 2 drinks that I've been missing the most. Now in the food side of things, you had bread, you had cheese and you had red meat and you had sauces. The 4 things that I generally lived off in the past and the 4 things that I have been missing the most while on Team Dynamix. While I was eating the food, it was fantastic. There was all these flavors that I hadn't had for 2 weeks that I'd missed and it was brilliant eating it. First sip of that ice cold beer, absolutely fantastic. Loved the sweetness of the Coke. That was all good during that kind of half an hour period of eating it all. The problem came afterwards. About half an hour after I'd finished the meal, the headache started to kick in and I started to feel a pain in my stomach. This carried on throughout the rest of the evening, which I spent basically just lying on my couch feeling terrible. My mouth was dry, I could feel the dehydration kicking in. Even though I'd had about 2 litres of water before this meal, I was starting to feel dehydrated. I had stomach cramps, I couldn't see properly. It was like the worst hangover I've ever had, but the same night as the debauchery. Went to bed, decided to try and sleep it off, woke up this morning, didn't feel quite as bad, but still had that hungover feeling, that grogginess, that lack of awareness, that lack of energy. That was about 9:30 that I got up. It's now 4 o'clock in the afternoon that I'm filming this and I've only just started to feel better again after I stuffed myself full of some vegetables to try and get some vitamins and nutrients back into me, had a bit of fruit juice and lots of water. What this has shown me is just how bad the stuff I was eating before actually was. So when I started eating healthy, I felt a bit weird as my body adapted to the change, but generally pretty good. Now that I've been eating healthy for a while and then had this unhealthy meal, just one meal as well, you know, not days and days of it, just one single meal, instantly felt terrible. It just shows how bad this stuff is for your body. Nothing should make you react like that. Certainly not instantly and certainly not carrying on to the next day. I mean, things do, we know alcohol does, things like that, but I always thought of bread, meat, cheese, while not being great for you, they're things you can eat and generally recover from quite quickly if you even feel bad at all, but that's not the case. What I've come to realise is that basically my body had just simply adapted to these things after weeks and months of eating them, but that didn't make them okay for me and certainly doesn't make them good. They're not things you should be eating, at least on a regular basis. I'm almost like scared to think about eating stuff like that again once Team Dynamix finishes. So I'm gonna have to stick with the healthy eating moving forward. Probably once it's done, not quite as strict as Team Dynamix is because it's not meant to be, I think, your entire life from there onwards. It's a big 4-week detox that hopefully teaches you some principles that you can take forward afterwards. So that will be my goal. Take the things I've learned, apply them in my daily life. Maybe something that was recommended was living clean 5 days a week and allowing yourself to, you know, have a treat or 2 over the 2 days of the weekend. Not setting out to eat or drink terribly, but just if things come up, things with friends or family or whatever, don't restrict yourself, but throughout the week, live as well as you can. And that sounds like a good principle to follow to me, because in all honesty, the way I felt last night and this morning, I don't ever want to eat a meal and feel like that again. It was actually disgusting and a little bit horrific to think that that was what I've been putting my body through for months, but without realising it because I've built up a tolerance or a mental block against it. Don't want to go back to that. So yeah, that's the result of my cheat meal. Fun while I was doing it, terrible thing afterwards.